Ukrainian drones have struck a number of energy facilities in the Moscow region for the first time. Military analysts are calling this attack the largest since the start of the full-scale invasion. The mayor of Moscow reported nearly 600 drones, over 100 of which were allegedly headed for Moscow and caused destruction and fires. We will tell you more in detail next. Did you hear that?
This is the largest drone attack on Moscow and the region. Explosions were reported in several districts of the metropolitan area at once. Among the targets were 3 oil industry facilities, the Moscow Oil Refinery in Kapotna and 2 oil pumping stations. To be more precise, one of the station's tanks was completely destroyed. Due to the intense fire, it is difficult to assess the condition of the other tank. Drones were maneuvering right over Moscow itself, despite air defense strikes. Probably over Kapotna. The Russians are trying to shoot down the Ukrainian birds. Explosions are ringing out. The city residents are getting nervous.
Another one is flying somewhere. There it is, the bastard. There it is, the little bugger, right overhead.
Several drones hit residential buildings. 3 people were killed.
That was very close.
Buildings were damaged in Khimki, Krasnogorsk, Zelenogorsk, and other suburban districts of the Russian capital. Dozens of flights were cancelled at all airports due to the attack. Muscovites are complaining they thought it was just bad weather, but it turned out to be a drone attack.
A very powerful explosion. The windows just shook. We just jumped up and immediately ran to the children. God, it's very frightening. It's very frightening.
Some Russians admit that they felt this kind of fear for the first time.
I'm in such shock. That's all.
The Russian Ministry of Defense reported 586 Ukrainian drones, of which about 130 were headed for Moscow. The Ukrainian ministry confirmed that the Russian capital, quote, never sleeps.
The war is returning to where it came from. For the first time, the defense forces struck the Moscow Oil Refinery, the Solnechnogorsk oil depot, and several microelectronics manufacturing sites. Previously, these sites were protected by a huge number of air defense systems. But something strange happened.
According to Robert Brovdy, the commander of the Unmanned Systems Forces, Moscow's one-sided subscription to a peaceful life has been cancelled.
Our responses to Russia's prolongation of the war and strikes on our cities and communities are entirely justified. This time, Ukrainian long-range sanctions have reached the Moscow region, and we are making it clear to Russians their state must end its war. Ukrainian drone and missile manufacturers continue their work.
Ukrainian drones traveled more than 500 kilometers from the border and successfully struck their targets, despite the high concentration of air defense systems around Moscow. At the same time, the defense forces struck a number of targets in temporarily occupied Crimea, as well as an FSB border patrol ship in the Caspian Sea area. Katerina Yeliseyeva, Podrobnosti, Inter-TV channel Marathon United News.
The United States has reinstated sanctions against Russian oil. The U.S. Department of the Treasury did not extend the temporary exemption from sanctions on Russian fuel. This permit applied only to crude oil that had already been loaded onto tankers amid the protracted war in the Persian Gulf. The easing was first introduced in March and extended in April. Its validity expired the day before. In this way, the U.S. administration has definitively ended the brief period of temporary sanctions relief for Russia's oil sector. And last night, the Russians attacked a Chinese merchant vessel in Ukraine's territorial waters. This was reported by the spokesperson for the naval forces, Dmytro Pletenchuk. The strike was carried out using Shahed drones. The vessel sails under the flag of the Marshall Islands but belongs to a Chinese company, and its crew consists exclusively of Chinese citizens. The occupiers also shelled a ship flying the flag of Guinea-Bissau. Fires broke out on both ships. There were no casualties among the crews. The ships are underway and have continued on to the ports. Since the evening, the enemy has also been shelling Sumy. As a result of a drone strike, a high-rise building was damaged, several dozen windows were blown out and balconies were destroyed. Since morning, people have been sweeping up broken glass and waiting for volunteers who will provide plywood and help board up the windows. There were 242 combat engagements on the front line over the past day. The General Staff recorded the highest number of Russian attacks in the Pokrovsk direction. Here, Ukrainian defenders repelled 32 enemy assaults. Intense fighting is also ongoing in the Huliaipol and Kostiantynivka directions, where Russian forces carried out 24 and 22 attacks, respectively. The enemy assaulted our positions in the southern Slobozhansky direction 13 times. Fighting from the rear is no longer just a fantasy. This is proven by the fighters of the Perun Unmanned Systems Battalion. They have set up an office for themselves, so to speak, for remote work hundreds of kilometers from the front line. But the distance does not prevent them from skillfully destroying enemy forces, equipment and bunkers. Learn more about the remote work of our drone operators in a joint report with Army TV.
Yes, that's it. Yes, something caught fire over there.
This is the first target hit by the UAV crew commander with the call sign Sultan at his new workplace. Previously, he launched FPV drones while being near the front line. He says working from the rear is more comfortable and safer.
You don't have to worry about getting in and out. That's the main issue. Well, that's all. It's safer and easier to work here.
Just a year ago, the positions of drone pilots were not much different from those of artillerymen or motor crews. Today, as I entered the remote control center for pilots of the 79th Separate Air Assault Tavria Brigade, my flashlight broke.
This is what the remote office of our drone operators looks like. All the workstations are like separate sections divided by partitions.
I came up with this idea, kind of like a call center or a gaming room, I don't know, with separate positions for each pilot, for each station, for the first and second operators. First of all, so that they don't interfere with each other, and secondly, so that everything is sectioned off and more organized.
The drone operators work here according to a specific scheme. They receive their tasks through a special program. Then the operator at the station quickly sets up the drone, and the local pilot flies out to the given coordinates.
This streamlines reaction time. Previously, by the time information got to us from the brigade, it could take up to 2 or 3 minutes sometimes. But now the reaction time, roughly speaking, based on our tests, is 30 seconds.
Not every UAV pilot can get into such a remote office. You need to have considerable experience. Just like the commander of the Venom crew. He has been at the front since 2019. Previously, he was a gunner on an APC. Back then, he knew absolutely nothing about drones. He jokes that he only saw them in movies. But now?
I fly the Chevy Shot in the autumn, at the moment. Well, mainly now we use the TM62, both single and double. We carry the doubles with the Chevy Shot and the singles with the Nemesis.
Scooters, optics, penguins. These are the names of the drones that the operators in this office work with. Drone operators who work remotely have better concentration, says the battalion commander. Here, the pilots feel safe, knowing that the enemy can't hunt them down.
Here we have the most experienced pilots, plus the second operators. And there are also ground teams who are located directly, well, closer to the front line. If something happens here with the internet or anything else, there's also a pilot at each position, usually less experienced, who can take over control.
The Russian army also has a UAV unit that operates remotely, Rubicon. But they are inferior to our Piran because they can't operate farther than 40 kilometers from the front line. For our drone operators, distance is not a problem. The main thing is to have internet access. Darina Kozier, Volodymyr Kravchuk. We are Ukraine. Army TV. Marathon. United News.